Hey y'all, my name's Mare. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going back to my roots and we're gonna talk about YA fantasy. From the beginning of my channel, I have always been an advocate for young adult fantasy. It's one of my absolute favorite genres, and I actually do already have a recommendation video on my channel if you'd like to go back and watch it. It is from 2021, so it's a little bit outdated, but I'll go ahead and link it because none of those book recommendations are going to be in this video. So if you need more YA fantasy, go there. It's a great place to start. It's definitely more generalized popular fiction, whereas today's focus is actually going to be underrated YA fantasy. So I have picked 5 titles that I really loved. Almost all of these books were 5 stars, only one was not, and I still really enjoyed that one. All of these books have less than 5,000 ratings on Goodreads, some of them a lot less than that. There is one title that is more popular, but it still has less than 15,000 ratings. So I wanted to include it because I really love that book. It is a huge reason why I am continuing to read YA fantasy, because there's always that like golden ticket in the genre, right? Like I was in a huge reading slump and then I picked up this book and it just reinvigorated my love for reading in 2021. So it had to go on this list, but I still think it's underrated because none of people are talking about it. Before we start, let me know what underrated YA fantasy you love. I would love some more recommendations and titles to pick up. All of these titles are going to either be a standalone or part of a completed duology, so never fear if you're low commitment like me. All of these books in the series are published and there's not very many of them. They're very contained. I'm personally a reader who likes to only have 1 or 2 books in a series. Hopefully if you are too, this video is helpful for more reasons than one. We're gonna start off strong with our first recommendation, a Dragonbird in the Fern. And this is one that actually only had 500-ish ratings on Goodreads when I checked. This is probably the most underrated book on this list, and I absolutely loved it. I fell in love with this book and I want more people to read it. It's got all the fun YA fantasy tropes, and I also feel like it relies on a lot of tropes that maybe aren't so popular but are still so fun to read about. This book follows Princess Giara and her sister, who was in line for the throne and she was going to be married to someone from another kingdom, was unfortunately murdered, and she wants to figure out who killed her because her sister actually comes back as a ghost with a vengeance. Kind of a problem, right? Giara ends up meeting her sister's previously betrothed and he wants her to continue to go on this deal for the good of both of their kingdoms, but there's a big problem because Giara's sister was training her whole life for this and was learning an entirely different language so that she could be with this individual. Giara don't know that language. She doesn't understand anything about this country, this culture, and now she has to go be a part of it. And one big struggle that she actually has is that she's dyslexic. It's already hard for her to read in her own language, and now she has to overcome that barrier in a secondary language. So I love that this book includes dyslexia. I feel like that's not something you see very often on paper, so I really appreciated that in this book. And when I looked at reviewers' thoughts and own voices, they felt that it was a very great, accurate representation from what I read. I don't struggle with that myself, but I know that a lot of readers did find themselves in this book, which I think is fantastic. What I really loved about this book was actually the language barrier. I thought that the way that the two really fell in love and romanced each other despite having this language barrier was just so sweet, and it helped me discover a trope that I actually really liked in books that I hadn't previously read from. So yeah, overall just really loved this book. It is a standalone, but I would still love to see more from this world. It definitely leaves you with some satisfaction as a reader, but still that constant yearning for more, and I think that's the perfect equation with YA fantasy books. The second book on this list is going to be that more popular per se book that I was talking about, and that is Hotel Magnifique by Emily J. Taylor. I have talked about this book quite a few times on my channel, but I haven't talked about it recently, and thinking about this book and just like putting together this video made me remember how much I love this book and why I still continue to read YA fantasy to this day, because This book just absolutely took me on a ride. It was so whimsical and magical, and the best word that I could use to describe this is mesmerizing. This book is often pitched as the Night Circus meets Caraval, so if you're into those sort of vibes, this book is definitely for you. This one follows a young girl named Janny and her sister Zoza, and they have a very close relationship. I love the sisterhood dynamic that is in this book. It's definitely one of the strongest factors of it, in my opinion. And they have always dreamt of going elsewhere, into this magical hotel called Hotel Magnifique. It's a traveling hotel. It's got a lot of magical powers and a lot of hidden secrets. So Janny and Zoza cannot afford to go stay at this hotel as a guest, but they do find themselves as part of the staff. They go and interview and they're hired, and Zoza finds herself in trouble due to the dark magic that this hotel has. So Janny must team up with this dark, mysterious, handsome doorman named Belle to rescue her sister and to uncover the horrors behind this hotel. Like I said, this book was just absolutely mesmerizing, absolutely enchanting. I love like a traveling hotel or like a traveling place. A place with magical abilities is always so much fun to read about for me, because I feel like we often get, you know, characters with magic and it's all kind of in the same vein, but when a place has magical abilities, I feel like that there's just so much that you can do with that, and this book definitely explored it really, really well. I love the mystery aspect of this book. I feel like it was super well developed and laid out so perfectly. I really want to reread this so that I can kind of piece together those parts and come to that conclusion on my own the next time I read this. Super fantastic. Definitely a reminder of why I love reading so much. And so even though this one isn't necessarily as underrated as the other titles on this list, it's definitely not getting the hype that it deserves. So pick this one up, please. Next on this list, we have the start of our duologies. So I have Ashlords, and I have actually not finished this series. I've only read this first title, but I loved it so much that when I started to read the second book, I was like, oh my god, I don't want this to be over. Like, I really loved being with these characters and this environment. So that's why I haven't finished it, is because of how much I enjoyed this first title, but it's definitely one that I plan on going back to. Ashlords follows these Phoenix writers who are entering a competition. There's 12 competitors for the crown, maybe 11. I don't know, 11's a weird number. It's 11. Wow. There are 11 competitors for this crown, and they must combine their knowledge of Phoenix writing with alchemy in order to win the competition. And even though there's 11 writers, you're only actually following 3 different voices. They come from all sorts of different backgrounds, and they all have their own reasons for why they need to win this race. It's very high stakes. It also includes a second person POV, which I found so interesting and engaging. I think that at first having a second person POV in a book can be a little jarring. Not even a little, like it is a lot, because it's not something we as readers often get to get the perspective of. But in this book, it was just done so well, and I think because there was a second person POV, you really felt the stakes of this competition, and you wanted so badly to be a part of this story that it felt like you were. The race competition was just so cool. It gave me all of the dystopian vibes. I felt like I was rereading Divergent or The Hunger Games, or even like something like Scythe for the first time, because it was just such a magical experience to feel like you're reading a dystopian novel from 2012 again. Like, that was my peak reading era. I definitely highly recommend this book. It was fantastic, and if you're a fan of dystopian, definitely pick this one up. Next on this list is Shielded. This is another duology, and I actually did prefer the second installment over this first one. This is my only book on this list that isn't a 5-star, but that does not mean I didn't immensely enjoy it. This one follows another princess who is betrothed, and of course she doesn't want to marry him, but her kingdom needs her to. So when her family is faced with a threat, she goes on this journey and she meets her betrothed, and she discovers he's not actually what she thinks he is. And of course, on that journey, there's a lot of exciting things that happen. It's very, very YA. Like, this is definitely a book that I think is a staple of all those YA tropes and just of the genre. You've got your princess, you've got your arranged marriage, you've got your romance, falling in love with the person you were supposed to hate, and it was just so much fun. I liked these characters a lot. They were very girl boss and I really respected that. I love female characters who are just unapologetically themselves and unapologetically going to get what they want, and this princess was definitely one of those cases. You also get a great cast of side characters. You get this cool magic system, but she is so cool, she's so powerful, and I loved getting to read about her magic and her falling in love. I thought it was just a really good story. The very last book on this list is Set Fire to the Gods. This is another duology and I love this one. This one is pitched as Avatar meets Gladiator, and you've got two characters from very different worlds. You've got Ash, who is from the long line of previous gladiators, and her mother is actually killed in the arena. So she is on a revenge mission. And you're also following Matic, who grew up on the streets, and he has this earth power, which is common in his people, or so he leads everyone to believe. He actually does have magical abilities that haven't been seen in centuries, so he's definitely very, very powerful and would be seen as a threat if anyone knew. So when Ash's revenge plot goes awry and accidentally throws the gods into a gladiator war, their paths meet and cool stuff happens. I really liked this book. I thought that the first installment was actually stronger than the ultimate conclusion, but I still really enjoyed both books and read them super fast. So highly recommend this series, especially if you like Avatar: The Last Airbender, because it's got some really cool magic in it. That's it for my 5 underrated YA fantasy book recommendations. Let me know if you learned any new titles from this. I would love to know if I actually gave underrated titles, books you haven't heard about, because that was truly my goal with this. I really want to read some more underrated YA fantasy books, so if you have any recommendations, please let me know in the comments below. If you've read any of these titles, what did you think of them? Did you love them as much as I did? I personally really struggle with picking a favorite out of this stack, so hopefully if you do pick up one of these, you find a book that you really, really love. Anyways, that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you being here. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it, if you found it helpful. Again, if you want some more young adult fantasy book recommendations, I'll definitely leave that previous video in the comment section down below and in the cards here. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye y'all!